back to the Bigday Morning Show. We've been talking about it this morning. We have CEO and President of Artists in Need, Mr. David Ford, is on the Bigday Morning Show Skype line. What's going on, David? Good morning.
Good morning to you guys. How's it going this morning? I appreciate you having me aboard.
Oh, it's no problem. We've been anxious to talk to you because we want to know what exactly is Artists in Need about.
Artists in Need is an organization. It was built first for musicians to help artists that were in need. We decided to expand our brand and continue to help people if they need some kind of mentoring, if they're looking for employment, anything that they may need. Everybody is considered an artist in their own right.
Right.
So why would we just go to one person when there's a whole world that needs to be saved?
All right.
Cool.
I like that.
Right.
I like that. Now, how did you come up with the name of your organization, Artists in Need? Where did that come from?
There was a young lady who was a musician, and unfortunately, she didn't have the funding to be able to, follow up in her career. And I felt really bad about it. So, I sat on my couch one day, and God gave me the vision. He gave me those words, Artists in Need. And he gave me a message to render out to everybody, and this is how it came about.
Wow, that's awesome. We're talking to David Ford, the CEO of Artists in Need, right here on the Bigday Morning Show. Now, when you were younger, at an early age, did you ever see yourself doing this? And the reason I asked it is because I read an article about a guy who he taped himself at 11 years old, and he said that when I'm 40, I'm going to be doing this and doing that. Did you ever sit down and do anything like that, or was this in your original vision?
You know what? I started young as a musician. I never knew I would take it to this level. I'm proud to say and glad to know, God gave it to me.
Yeah.
But no, I never imagined it would get to this level. I never imagined this.
Now, you were a former musician. What did you play?
Actually, I was an artist.
Okay.
I was actually a hip-hop artist. Back in the day, we had the nice group, the Super Soul Brothers, when we were 13 years old, and, it was funny.
Yeah.
We did all the crisscross stuff. It was pretty hilarious.
Oh, you went back to crisscross. Wow. David Ford will make you jump.
That's not right.
What? I'm just saying, crisscross. He just took me back for a minute.
That memory.
Now, let me ask you this. A lot of folks, they have dreams and, big aspirations of making it. And sometimes, they pack up and go to places like New York, Atlanta, or even California, to get their big break. Now, knowing that, you're from Cleveland, that's your hometown, right?
Correct.
Okay. Did you ever think about starting this, going to another state or somewhere else to start Artists in Need?
You know what? I gave it thought, but God has not moved my feet.
Amen.
Right.
He's telling me to stay home,
Right,
and do what I got to do and expand the brand to other states and cities. So I'm here.
Amen. That is awesome. We are talking to David Ford. He is the CEO of Artists in Need out of Cleveland, Ohio. I got another question for you. Then I'm going to let my co-host ask you a couple of questions. In your opinion, what are the main factors that keep independent artists from making it big?
Biggest point is direction. Not able to find their niche. They want to be like everybody else. Find your niche. Be original. Have your material together.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to do the hard work. Everybody wants to say, I'm a star. Well, all these stars have to do things to get there, okay?
Yeah.
Follow the steps. Read. You have to read.
Can you tell me, do you also direct them as far as management? Because I'm finding a lot of artists are getting involved with people that are supposed to be managers, but they are getting the short end of the stick, so to speak. So do you also engage in teaching them that?
I engage in teaching, but I don't like to say the word management. I actually like to give them empowerment, okay? Because if you for yourself, for your own career, you don't need managers anymore. With the way the internet is, if you do some reading and do some researching, you're paying a manager to do something that you can actually do for yourself.
That was a very interesting point because something that Oprah used to say all the time was that she would say that she never needed anybody to count her money. She can count her own money.
That's right.
And when you can keep the control of everything that's going on with your career to yourself, then that actually helps out because there's less hands in the pot, basically.
Correct.
Now I'm an artist myself, so I understand that whole process because I've been in it for a long time. What would you recommend to people who pretty much have their packages together? They have the demos, they have their pictures, they have everything. They just don't know what the next step is, because a lot of times artists are pretty much prepared on the musical end and pretty much on the promotion end. They just don't know the next step to take.
Good question. First thing I would say is see what the market's doing, okay? By preparing yourself in the market, you're ahead of the curve. Right now, the key industry, everybody's moving over to distribution, including ourselves. Right. AIN is moving over to distribution because now if you can distribute your own music and make that buzz for yourself, you can make millions of dollars for yourself. That's what I suggest. Look at what the market's doing. All the major labels, the big five became the big three. The big three next year is probably going to become the big one.
Right.
They are scrambling. They're scrambling to stay afloat. Stop looking for major deals. They're not there.
Come on, say that again.
Yeah.
That's right.
Correct. They're not there anymore.
That's right.
That's what distribution is. It's a way to distribute your own music.
Yeah, and we are living in a day and age where it doesn't take much for you to make something yourself.
Right.
Matter of fact, I was looking at a list yesterday on the internet. There was a list called 100 Things That Your Child Will Not Know About. The dot matrix printer, vinyl, stuff like that. And, it's interesting because one of the things that they stated, since we were talking about, doing it all yourself, it's like these kids are not familiar with the process that you had to go through in order to get record deals back in the day. A lot of times you had to hunt down these producers and these record label owners and perform for them in front of their faces, or try to hunt them down to give them a demo and stuff like that. And all of that's not even really necessary anymore. Matter of fact, recording studios was one of the things on the list because most people make their own music at home on their own computers.
Right.
And can come out with quality material that matches the stuff that you could get out of a recording studio.
Just like right here at the Bigday Morning Show. Because we're
we're
in 3 different places, 3 different cities, 2 states, and I'm sitting here in my pajamas right now, David.
That's correct. There you go.
That's how we do right here at the Bigday Morning Show. We're talking to CEO David Ford of Artists in Need. Now, you mentioned distribution. Recently, I was reading an article on you, and you were dubbed as the king of distribution. Why is that?
Because one of the things that we rely on is staying ahead of the curve. I say that a lot.
Yeah.
We understand the concept that distribution is the new thing.
Right.
For the next 20, 30 years, it's going to be about self-distributing your own music.
Yes.
And by me being a faithful student of reading, I've saw this coming. It's been coming for the last 10 years.
Yes, it has.
And people never wanted to adhere to it. And I hooked up with a company. It took me to go all the way to Australia to hook up with a company, and they gave us what we wanted, and we're going to bring it back to everybody. That's something that they can afford, because that's the number one problem for artists. A lot of them don't have a budget.
Exactly.
So, we gave them something that they can afford, and it's worth their while.
Amen. That sounds awesome. Well, when artists want to get a hold of you, if anybody want to get a hold of you, can you give the information on how to contact you?
I always do. I can give you a couple ways.
Okay.
First, I give out my personal phone number. It's 216-571-0232. I'm never afraid to take a phone call from any artist.
Very cool.
They can actually reach me through my email. That's aindistribution.ceod4@gmail.com. Or they can go to our website. That's www.ainmusicdistribution.com. And they can always find me on Facebook, David Ford.
Definitely.
Most common name, can't forget it.
Well, David, we know you are a busy man. You're on your way to Columbus, Ohio right now. We appreciate you taking the time out to talk with us on the Bigday Morning Show. Man, much success to you, and we'll definitely be in touch with you. You can believe that.
I appreciate you guys. God bless.